Welcome back, everyone. I hope you are energized and ready for our last 90 minutes of the Doha Smart Cities Summit, brought to you by Msheri Properties in Qatar. It's not all bad this year. COVID-19 allowed us to have more family time, less frantic workload, and a healthier lifestyle, all in all. It was also a fresh start for the environment, but also for the innovation ecosystem. Many ideas emerged from the pressing needs that arose from the pandemic, but also many companies boosted their innovation process to respond to these needs and seize the opportunity of this forced change before the world goes back to its old habits. Innovation and sustainability is the topic of our next 40 minutes panel, moderated by Toby Horline from Green Tech Village in Sweden. To you, Toby.
Thank you very much, and good day to you. Welcome to this session on innovation and sustainability. I'd like to share my screen with you to introduce the panel that I have the honor of guiding through this chat today. So we have Mahdi Al-Hebabi from Vodafone Qatar, the Business Service Director. We have Adrian Wood, the CEO of Siemens Qatar and Kuwait. We have Leonie van den Berken, the Program Director of Amsterdam Smart City. We have Jan Reinmüller from KPMG Singapore, the Head of Digital Village and Partner. And last but certainly not least, we have Jason Twill, the Director of the World Cup Master Program, the Qatar Foundation. Now, sustainability and innovation, that is certainly a big topic, and we need to talk about it. We have talked about it for the better part of the last 50 years, since the early 70s. We're still not quite there. The Sustainable Development Goals are in everyone's mind, on everyone's business plan, and certainly on many people's daily agenda. We will see the city becoming a smart, or otherwise, for that matter, becoming the tip of the spear, if you want, over the next decades to lead sustainable development until the end of the century, at which point we will have a population of almost 11 billion people on this planet, up from about 8 billion today. The city will grow in importance also because urbanization is a big topic. So back in the early 70s, as I mentioned already, half of the cities that we have now did not even exist. Now that's something to dwell upon. And 37% of the population lived in cities. It will be more than half by the mid-century. And that is something we need to address here in this panel. We see trends emerging: circular economy, energy efficiency, IoT, sensor networks, citizen engagement and grassroots movements, neighborhood projects. These are all trends that we see in a smart city context. We have policy frameworks, the EU Green Deal, obviously, the Mission 100 cities for carbon neutrality. We see the same theme emerging on many levels, and innovation plays, not only in my daily business, but in everyone's business at this point, a major role in bringing about sustainable development. It can also be distracting, but we'll talk about that in a very short moment in this panel. I think innovation generally, and that's my last comment here. Greta Thunberg said, "No, not one technology will save us," and that is quite true. I'm quite sure that would be astonishing if it did. However, 1,000 different ones might just do the trick. So in this panel, we talk about some of these 1,000 different innovations and technologies and see how that is coupled to sustainability within the smart city sector. So without further ado, I'd like to address Leonie with the first question here. How do you see the cross-section between innovation and sustainability in your daily work?
Okay, thank you so much, Toby, for this great introduction, and thank you all for having me here. And like you said, lots of new cities have arisen, and I believe there has been calculated that 60% of the cities still have to be built to 2050 in order to provide for enough households for everyone going to the cities, even in this pandemic times. Well, for Amsterdam Smart City, we're an independent innovation platform existing already for 11 years. And at our very foundation, 11 years ago, it was designed to have innovations directed towards solutions for sustainability. So it's in our core DNA. So whatever we do, we try to help very different people, very different organizations combine their thoughts, their ideas, their unique qualities in order to have this smart technology, this smart thinking towards sustainability. So different use of energy, different use of resources, different cleaner use of mobility, for example. So for us, it's the very core of what we do. And it's not only directed to cities only, which is very important, at least in Europe, as our cities are too small to think on a city scale. So we need to think on regional and even national, international scale, because we are all embedded in this global ecosystem. So that's for a start.
Indeed, yeah. This is a very comprehensive look at it. I mean, you're dealing with everything in the city pretty much from your point of view. So that's a high ask to leave something out, I guess, actually touches on everything.
Yeah.
Maybe from Adrian, if I may ask, from Siemens, from an economy point of view, from a company that is in the midst of smart things, of application of technology, how do you see innovation coming into play in your daily routines?
Thanks, Toby. Well, from a Siemens point of view, I think it's very, very important. We have no choice but to move forward with smarter solutions or an ecosystem of solutions. And that is essential, not only because more and more people are going to cities, but you look at the finite resource we have and the need to, I would say, control the resources, control the grids, control the energy, and basically be more efficient. And the only way you can do that is combining good concepts with technology. You need both, but they must be hand in hand. And once you work out the concept you want and the technology you need, you can bring them together, and then there's your solution. And so from a Siemens point of view, we're very interested in this. And it's not a trend, it's a must, in bringing the technology to make the cities more efficient, more smarter, and really bringing the physical world and the digital world closer together so that the physical world gets better, smarter, quicker. That's our job, and it's very exciting.
I imagine it would be. As also there is the what I would imagine is bringing people together to do this is often hard, especially if you're looking at concepts. So let's mark that down for later. I want to go into stakeholder alignment and involvement a bit later on in this chat. For now, Jan, can you give us an impression from the Singapore side of things? We are a global panel here, so that's a very fortunate situation, I believe. Get some different perspectives. Jan, are you there? You're muted. Sorry.
Okay, sorry. I think Singapore already embarked 5 years ago on what we call Smart Nation, really trying to transform the whole city into being smart. But I think the core of it is what I'm seeing here is the financial center, transformation. So being a smart, sustainable financial center at the heart of it. I think that's what we have seen really in the last couple of years, really playing out within, incredible new infrastructures built to really, coming up with these economic efficiencies, building fintech ecosystems, looking really into, how can we help, SMEs to become more efficient, because I think there's a correlation between economic efficiencies and sustainability, and many more. So quite interesting, what we see here, and ultimately it will improve the life of citizens. Ultimately, you will also learn more about the data you capture, because once you have digitized all of the different areas, then obviously you also get a better understanding where, citizens basically spend their time and money. That's just, as a quick overview about what is, happening in Singapore at the moment.
Fascinating. That is an entirely different take on it. So fintech as an enabler, basically, and how to shape the structure of actors into something that they are not yet. So let's touch upon that later as well, and data, of course, being one of the big themes in this overall event. Now, Mahdi, can I ask you from the Vodafone Qatar perspective, what is sustainability for you guys? What does it mean, and how is innovation coming to it?
Yeah, so we believe that sustainability is very important for us to ensure that we are creating the right model and the right innovation idea. When it's coming to Vodafone, we are aligning with the government vision 2030 to become one of the smartest city, Doha to be smartest city in the world. Also, to implement this vision, our role is very important as a connectivity provider, as also digital services provider to enable the foundation of the connectivity. So to give you example, what we are doing in the last 2 years, especially now Doha is one of the first 5G enablers when it's coming to technology. And this 5G will help the government and the private sector to build all the application, all the innovation idea, which will help us to have a sustainable more systems. When it's coming also to other technology like IoT, like machine learning, like big data, we believe this investment which we did in the last 2-3 years is now have been monetized, especially with the government focus to push private sector to invest more into this technology, to have more sustainable services. As an example, IoT, which we already invest in, now helping the government to have better waste management, to have better quality of air, to have better assets tracking and better fleet management. So as a connectivity provider, we believe any smart city needs strong connectivity provider, and not only strong connectivity traditional provider, also innovative one with a new technology, with a new idea, and also with the most optimal model when it's coming to commercialize all of these services. MOTC, which is the Ministry of Telecommunication and the Transport, they already issue the vision and the regulation for making Qatar more smart, and this help all of ICT provider, also service provider in Qatar, to be more focused when it's coming to making Qatar more smart. We already started this path, and we start now seeing big government entity like Kahrama as an example, now using more smart meter, which will be sustainable service, where they will benefit from getting automated tools to read the electricity meter, where it used to be manual. So this is as a big example of using the right partnership and using the right also tools to innovate and to have more sustainable service for the country.
Very much the enabler then, carried on by frameworks, by regulation, but also by engaging the right people and the right business partners to make this happen. Very good point. Yes. Jason, I would like to ask you the same question. What role does it play in your daily life? But also, slight caveat here, what's the biggest challenge that you see that needs to be overcome?
Yeah, thank you, Toby. Great question. Sustainability for me has always been a state of mind. And I've been working in urban regeneration cities for about 22 years. And where I've seen the most success around urban transformation has been using a framework and a hierarchy. And it starts with a mental model, governance, process, tools, and then products and technologies. So putting in a hierarchy that enables us to look at appropriate technology that supports a broader vision of the culture and values of the place for the city to come from. A mental model being the worldview and mindset we use to think or conceive of the ideas that are transformational or disruptive. Governance around progressive governance to put the enabling conditions in place for the private sector and government to work together to achieve those disruptive outcomes for cities. I look at cities like Amsterdam and Orleans as kind of on the pinnacle of where, really progressive urban governance that allows for industry to kind of deliver disruptive technology and have investor confidence that you can get through the processes and approvals quickly. A process that, really makes teams work together in a collaborative fashion and think outside the box. The tools that give us better ideas and achieve better decision-making more efficiently. And that could be with the evolution of AI and technology that we're using to analyze data in cities is getting better and better to improve our decision-making. And then the products and technologies that serve that greater purpose. Challenges I see today, well, going back in the 20th century, I think we're still been stuck in this kind of technocratic, mechanized way of thinking about cities. And we have this, issue of architectural sameness or place sameness happening, where you can drop a shape and drape glass tower all over anywhere. You wouldn't really know where you're from. So places are losing their identity. So I look at Musharraf here in Qatar as a great example that really committed to a different approach to regeneration, like drawing on the heritage and cultural values and anthropology and archaeology of this country to really come up with a regime of thinking about architecture differently, place differently, the curation of the ground plane differently, but then at the same time layering in a tremendous amount of technology to make it an extremely smart place, to make it efficient, safe, and a comfortable urban environment for people. So I see, hopefully we're at this nexus now where I think there's a demand to attract talent and capital to cities. You really need to draw on the culture of your city and be hyper local to your place, to be unique and destinational, to attract that kind of talent that want to have authentic place. How does industry and technology partners like Siemens or Vodafone or Ooredoo, partner with industry to help deliver those outcomes? But again, being in service to that bigger vision about a culturally driven place and city.
Very interesting. Here we already see, ladies and gentlemen, a pattern emerge here. So we have technology obviously meeting the needs. A city is very, very, very little without its citizens. And how do we fuse these together? And that brings us to frameworks and to how do we process this and how do we frame it as, as a semantic concept, but also from the very content. I think, Leonie, the famous donut concept of Amsterdam, and we are approaching lunch, so this is perfectly apt to talk about donuts at this point. How do you handle this? This has been, I believe, haloed as a real success case and the way forward, at least, in the cultural background and institutional background that we are moving in here in Central Europe. How do you, can you, tell us about the donut concept of Amsterdam?
Well, the donut concept, just to be quick about it, well, the donut of Kate Raworth, I assume, is well known, and it's all about, like I said before, you cannot look at a city by itself. You need to look at it on a regional and global scale. So how are your connections? And of course, the donut is all about providing diversity and inclusivity. So enough. A good life, a sustainable life, a happy, thriving city for all, whether your background or income is. And the success of the Donut Coalition, I think, lies in a long twisted tradition of Amsterdam, even for my own foundation, of this cooperation within the ecosystem. We have learned, like Jason also said, that we need everyone in place. So we need a government for regulation, for wanting, for subsidies on market imperfections. We need a market like Siemens, Vodafone, whoever, to design this technology. But we also need societal foundations, who are my partners as well, to make these connections with citizens. And we need, of course, knowledge institutions, to do this deep-founded research. And we have this long history of combining all these people and all these thoughts with the shared mindset of wanting to have this sustainable, thriving, inclusive, and fair city. So I think that is one of the main successes. And one of the other things I would like to add is lots of times when we talk with smart cities, we talk about citizen adoption and citizen incorporation, and we would like to put onto the table that's too narrow-minded. We also need to have on board the CEOs, decision makers of private companies. They should adopt also what technology can do for them, not only the Siemens, but for example, an hospital. How does the work of a hospital change when we have autonomous vehicles? And we've learned here as well, and again, back to the Donut Coalition, we need to bring politicians along. We've learned for a long time that citizens might be even more front runners than politicians, aldermen or council members of cities. So that people from cities companies are coming up with innovations that cannot be adopted by the regulations of government. So we need them all. And with this Donut Coalition, back to that, again, it's a framework where we have all these different actors, these multi-stakeholder actors within this ecosystem in place, together with the same holistic mindset that everything works together. You need to look on a city scale in this huge level. And then it's all about, like Jason said, it's mindset. Without a right mindset, it's very hard to come together. And then last point, what is difficult is to have a good understanding how big the issues are. I've met so many people who thought climate change was something in the future. When we are finalized with our meetings, then climate change will start. But of course, it has started a long time ago, and it does not wait for us to start acting. So we act now.
I'd wager it's an easy ask for the Dutch, as they already are underwater. So I think make that point.
I myself am living on the bottom of a lake. So with this rising water levels, I'm in danger with my house.
So the top-down, and just another question here, the top-down, bottom-up combination of governance here, governance models, or just the very daily business of it. I mean, we don't have to framework everything. We don't have to explain everything. Sometimes things just work. So what would you share as like a take-home message maybe for everyone else? What really works? How can you do this? How can you fuse the citizens with the politicians and the CEOs and, you know, the management agencies? How can you do that?
Well, it starts maybe with already acknowledging that sometimes it needs to be done top down, sometimes it needs to be bottom up. So the answer is mostly into the question, what does it need? So it's really putting yourself into the question, into the issues you want to resolve, and then the best way to approach it will come to you. And one other thing, I think what works quite well is acknowledging that it's hard work. Cooperation between all these different stakeholders is not a Sunday walk in the park. It's really hard work. And it needs, again, this mindset, joining people and having them. And we put a lot of work in that to create an atmosphere of curiosity, open mind, and respect, knowing that, and even respect to yourself, that you acknowledge that you don't have all the answers. So embrace your own imperfections, not be harsh to the imperfections of other people. So when you think, oh, Jason forgot this, I can help him instead of judging. So this is what we try to do, is this open, curious, helping attitude with a lot of fun. Because we have learned that when you put a bit of fun into place, people ease up and it helps your creative, open mind. So that this is what we try to do.
Interesting. That is an interesting approach. And I very much suspect, and so would many people in the audience, that this is very much culturally related. So Adrian, maybe I can ask you from a Siemens Kuwait and Qatar perspective. It's quite different from the Netherlands, obviously, and you're in the midst of it. So if you apply a technology, if you use it in a project, let's say digital twins or IoT, whatever, you know, some cutting edge smart city tech, how does this, what Leonie just said, work? How would it work, and how would it probably not work? What else could be done?
Well, I want to come back to also something that Jason said, and I agree, and I want to challenge him, and Leonie mentioned as well. And the key is, I think, mindset. And we sometimes see a good mindset initially, but then it's not driven right through the project. And by the time this idea, this smart city or this smart segment reaches implementation, it's nowhere near smart any longer, and it's being transformed to a normal system. So it really is driving the mindset right way through with different stakeholders, but keeping that mindset, I want to be smarter, I want to do it better for various reasons, and not just getting, be it politics, be it finance, in the way. The point I want to challenge him on is that on the technology side, sometimes the technology leaders know what's possible, know what's coming, and have some good ideas themselves. So I would love to be involved with the politicians and with the stakeholders, because we have some great ideas and we know what you can do. And quite often, when you talk to customers about smart cities, they initially think of small ecosystems. Well, the real benefits are when you try and bring them together. And when you start sharing data between ecosystems, you can get more benefit. And one specific example is, in general, we spend about 90% of our time in buildings, a ridiculous amount of time. So they have to be one of the focal points. And in the past, the building has been a lump of concrete. But if you actually do make it truly smart, one, it should then become not just an asset, but a competitive advantage, either for the business using it or for the owner. And there's many things you can do to make that building smart, efficient, less pollution, interact with its inhabitants, i.e. the employees or the visitors or the guests or the owners. There's a hell of a lot you can actually do. So I'd love to be included at the stage one and not brought in at the end, oh, what technology can support? No, what can we do? You mentioned digital twin, and that's a modeling software. When you can digitize something, then you can actually really play with it, make mistakes, expand it, and then say, I want that model. You can do it in the planning stage, or you can actually build it on top of your data, and then you can really start to get smart. You can involve past data, you can have AI, you can have predictive. Because, for example, if you're looking at crowd control, many times events have happened in the past, or you have past data. So you can use that to create a much efficient crowd control, or transport control, or smart transport, or smart building. It's almost endless. So it really is using the concepts, the data, and going for it. So I'd love to be included at the stage one. There's a lot that technology does. It's not just an enabler, it's an idea provoker. And the key is to bring it all together, data first, onto a platform, such as like a MindSphere platform, and then make it smart. That's how I would drive it.
That is a couple of very good points here. So the integration of everyone from the get-go to make sure that the idea does not leave the project halfway through the project. It always needs to be there in place until the very end. And although being adapted, obviously, in the middle, if something changes, it needs to be a pillar of the whole project. Scaling, I think, is something that you sort of touched upon with this. If it doesn't have the scale, if it doesn't have the wider impact, it becomes problematic, obviously, from a business point of view, because there's not enough revenue in it. Very simply, you can't do the small projects. Only it needs to be big enough to make sense. Also, for a city, and the budget and the planning takes months, years sometimes. So obviously, there is scale a big issue. Jason, maybe you want to quickly respond to Adrian's challenge. Let's make this a.
I want to strengthen exactly what Adrian's saying. So you're absolutely correct. So in that framework I propose, I probably could have elaborated. That's just a decision of what technology to apply. It's at the end of that process. But my mantra is everyone engaging everything early, the 4 E's. So an example, when I worked on South Lake Union Innovation District in Seattle, Siemens and Microsoft were at the very epicenter and at the start of our projects that helped us shape our decision making. We're having that same conversation now. So I represent the Cutter Foundation. It's 25 years old, and it's a hugely diverse, incredible foundation. founded on the vision of Sheikh Moza bin Nasser and her husband Hamad bin Khalifa, the father emir of the country. And we have Education City, which is about 14 square kilometers, in its own right, an experimental precinct with universities, research centers, but very open dialogue with the Ministry of Transportation and Communication here, the Ministry of Municipality and Environment, on how we collaborate with government and apply and pilot these ideas with organizations like, the technology providers here in this country, at Siemens, Vodafone, Ooredoo, and really test and you get feedback and research from that to really shift the country's direction, which is a beautiful, bold vision for where the country wants to be in 10 years' time from now. I'm also a huge advocate of not shifting, but kind of building and evolving the smart cities paradigm to the wise city and ensuring who's the technology for. And one of the crises we deal with in the urban context today is equity and inclusion. And how does technology help support that in an urban environment? Affordable housing is a critical issue. We mentioned how citizens get more involved. Amsterdam's got an incredible citizen-led housing, ecosystem happening. Cities like Berlin, Zurich, I go to because they're attractive to talent and capital and being pinnacles of creative urbanism. And a lot of that lies in the fact that it isn't just top-down developers and government building these places. These new precincts, like Meralvaun in Zurich, are citizen-led precincts. 500 dwellings, mixed-use regeneration precincts, all being run and decided by the citizens and community that will live and reside in that place. And when you have the community with you at the table, and this is advocating that we have to have much better community engagement in our projects, that breeds this really incredible nexus of innovation and sustainability and other ideas, because you have your end users. You're not driven only by assumptions, you're driven by direct feedback from people that will live in that place and come up with ideas with you. And it's just, I've seen so many incredible examples of some of the most innovative projects I've toured. There was no developers involved at all, and government worked directly with communities. So you're seeing this advent of a new type of urban regeneration and city making happening, where citizens are kind of right there at the start with technology companies asking how they want their precinct to be smart, how they want their home to be smart, how they want their mobility solutions to be smart, but also hyper sustainable and carbon neutral. And that just changes the way we think about, I always call it the assumption killing machine process, because so much of what we build is driven by our assumptions. Yes, we do research and analysis, but nothing beats having a coffee with your neighbor. It's an important way to engage and think about the future of our cities.
That's certainly a good addition to a digital twin to keep all sides of the human mind engaged and the interaction, which in these times obviously is very hard to do. So I think extra focus on that. Jan, from Singapore's vantage point, how does it work over there? It's not quite the same as Qatar, and it's certainly not quite the same as Central Europe, Zurich and Berlin being mentioned. How does it work over there with what you do, the engagement, the top-down, bottom-up combination?
Yeah, let me share a few things. Sorry, 1 second.
Love that. That's a COVID moment.
Sorry, my apologies.
No worries.
No, I just want to touch something very important what was said earlier. I think, adoption mindset, and I will come to this basically, also to the Singapore case. So I said two things earlier coming from Singapore. One is the infrastructure, which I define as bottom up, right? Where the government really provides the technology infrastructure. And then I talked about startups, startup ecosystems. So why is this important? For me, that's the top down, basically, where we're saying, we know that from an adoption mindset, the established companies have more a challenge in adopting new technologies, adopting these new infrastructures. So having a startup ecosystem as the first mover on these new infrastructures is actually a big advantage, and it will drive adoption and will put pressure on established companies. So I think I just want to, go back what I said in my opening and connect the two, and what I heard obviously from Adrian, Jason, earlier about the adoption mindset and how difficult sometimes it is. But from a government perspective, if you look at it, if you own the infrastructure, you own the data, right? You have startups making use of it. They're running their own business model. They drive revenue for themselves, for the economy, for the GDP. But on the infrastructure level, you own all the data sets. Once you have the data sets, then you can make sense of data. You can identify correlations. We have a lot of interesting cases here when it comes to dengue. Yeah, how to identify dengue? You know, which data sets can you use for this? And all will basically improve the livelihood of the citizen. I know it's a little bit different to what Jason said earlier when it comes to, you know, having a coffee with your neighbor. I'm pretty much a technologist. I'm data driven, and I believe having a proper infrastructure in place from a government will help and makes it much easier than from a top-down level to encourage individuals, startups as the first mover, but then obviously established companies to make use of these things. And that's what we see in Singapore. And just to highlight a few of these initiatives, being at Pay Now, which enables you to do mobile by mobile, basically payments, or to corporates, we are building now an e-invoice, a nationwide e-invoicing platform. All of this will help in building new business models on top, but it ultimately improves the livelihood and of the citizen and generates this massive amount of data.
Very good. That's also very interesting points making on the connection of data and startup, the innovation capital, you could say, that a city also has. That's very important here. Leonie, I know you are keen to answer Adrian's points here very quickly. We're almost at the end of this panel, but please.
No, I will be. No, I just was like Adrian said, I said, oh, this is exactly how the corporates within my ecosystem are talking as well. I have all these ideas, and how do I get it onto the table? How do I get into discussion? And so it's, like I said before, it's not only about incorporating citizens, but it's also incorporating all these people who have not this innovation mindset. So this is what we try to do, have all these meetings, getting people like Jason does, meeting each other, getting to know each other, have this interaction and taking time to understand one each other. So I would love maybe later to talk a bit about how you do it, because we have the same and we try the same. And another thing I would like to put in place with this crowd management systems, and other ones have said as well, what we try in Amsterdam is not only crowd management, but crowd support. So again, you can have all these data, like some of you said, but you can put them out. And so citizens themselves can manage themselves with the data provided. With one issue for us in Amsterdam region, it's very important that data is inclusive, be as transparent as possible. And we put a lot of effort now in having people having access to digital tools. So be it the hardware or the software. So have people learn to get connected. So that I would like to reflect. Thank you.
No, that's, you're making the real point here. It's all about communication. It's about getting in touch. It's about keeping up the conversation. 40 minutes obviously do not suffice. So,
no, but if people don't have a computer, they can't communicate.
No, that's also a very tricky issue. You have to see each other in person, quite literally. You have to go there and talk to them. Yeah. Now we have a very couple of 2 minutes left or so. So I'd like to take that occasion out to thank everyone on this panel very much. This was a very good start for a fantastic conversation that we could continue until the day is out probably. We can't, sadly. Again, communication, interaction, integrating the stakeholders in a reciprocal, fair and open manner, to be respectful, to be interested, and to be open to challenge their assumptions. Of course, that's easy, but also your own. It's not that easy. And then somehow bring it to the table and keep focus on what you want to do. Don't get distracted. So these are all points that we've made today, I believe, to sum up. And there is no one that should be left out of it. The industry is important as much as the governments, as much as the citizens. And it's about the procedures at this point, I believe, and the incentives for everyone to get on board, and the channels of communication. These are issues that need addressing as quickly as possible, I believe. So with that, I'd like to call it a day for this session. Thank you all for joining. Do get in touch with the organizers out there in the audience if you have questions. And thanks again. Be safe. Goodbye.
Thank you, Toby, for moderating this panel. And thank you, dear panelists, for your time and for your insight. And now, time for our last and fourth panel of the day.